I'm having some thoughts about the idea of niching down as a therapist, and of course, I'm going to bring them to the internet to share. Now, first, I want to make it very clear that I have no problems with therapists who choose to work with very specific populations. In fact, I think that's a really important part of the mental health care world. We need people who are experts in treating OCD. We need people who are experts in treating substance use. I'm talking about this because for a while, I felt like maybe I was deficient as a therapist because I didn't have a very specific, very defined population that were the only people I worked with as clients. And what I've recognized is that there are two different kinds of niches in the therapy world. One is the niche of the specific populations or symptoms or diagnoses that you work with. And another way to niche down is to really define your clinical approach to therapy. I have a very defined approach to how I conceptualize my clients' problems, how I work with them in session, how I structure our time together. I have done a lot of training and spent a lot of time really developing my personal style as a therapist. And while I'm not necessarily the therapist for everybody, I've also found that my style doesn't necessarily only lend itself to one specific population. I find a lot of fulfillment in working with people who are struggling with different things, whether that be anxiety, depression, family and relationship issues. And I don't feel the need to cut off any of those sources of clients. I like the variety. But what has been especially helpful for managing my imposter syndrome and making me feel successful as a therapist and connecting with the clients who are meant for me is getting really, really clear on how I do therapy. That is my niche. So, a small example of this is I am not a super skills based therapist. I think learning skills is really important for a lot of people. It's just not something that I'm interested in or good at. I'm not going to sit down and give you worksheets about challenging your thoughts or distress tolerance or coping skills. Not because those things aren't important, but just because those aren't the problems I enjoy working with. And that's okay. If somebody calls me for a consultation and say, hey, I'm really looking for someone to teach me coping skills and help me keep records of my thoughts and make these changes, I'm going to say, amazing. I'm probably not the therapist for you, but I have some fantastic colleagues that I would feel totally comfortable referring you to. So I'm curious to hear if this is something that resonates with you, and if you're a therapist who doesn't have a super defined population niche, I'm curious if you do feel like you have a very defined style as far as how you approach therapy.